And good evening. Good evening. We are at Wednesday, January 10th, the year 2018. How about that? And we're here to talk about to wrap up the 2017 storm chase season here in Virginia. At the moment, it's just Andrew Smith and myself. A couple other people had to bail. Peter Forster is going to join us again. He had to reboot his computer, and then we had some other folks with had technical and personal things they had to take care of. But we're going to just kind of run through some of our storm experiences from this past year. And to kick us off, I'm going to attempt to do something I've never done, and that is Dean Davison recorded a video for us on YouTube. So I'm going to try on a YouTube Hangout to show a YouTube video. So we'll see how this works here. Let me try the screen share. And we'll do this and that. Okay, now let me play it.
I got the video, but I don't get the audio.
You don't have any audio?
If I do, it's very faint. But I see there's a setting you can change to get that going, but I don't see anything.
All right, we're not getting anything there, Andrew?
Yeah, I wasn't hearing anything on my end. But
okay. Well, like I said, that was just a trial for me. So what I'll do, Dean says that he's dropped me a link, and I will drop that link into the notes, their comment section of this video once it presents on YouTube. So we'll just kind of leave it at that.
Switch your audio to up in the settings. Switch your audio to your speakers, and it might play it. I don't know if it's worth doing that or not. You might get a reverb.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about is a reverb, since I'm just using the I have my mic and then using the internal mic on this thing. So, well, I'll drop the link in there. People can watch it. Dean does a pretty nice job. I watched it. It's about a 7-minute video that he runs through. It's from May 4th or 5th of this last year. I forget which day it was, where he was watching some stuff on radar, was convinced there was a tornado, and then went down and did a preliminary site survey, and he shows video of it. And it turns out that the National Weather Service then went out and did a survey and determined there was an EF0 down there. It's in Bedford County, near the town of Bonita. So I will put that video link into the comments, and then we'll go from there to do that. That's about, like I said, about 7 minutes or so for that. So, well, we tried. I wasn't sure how showing a YouTube video on a YouTube Hangout was going to work, but if I could have done it another way, we would have done it. So, all righty. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to Andrew. Pete Forster will join us here in a little bit when he gets his technical issues out of the way. So, Andrew, what storm or storms are you talking about, and where are we today?
So last year for me was very inactive. I wasn't able to get out as much as I wanted to. It wasn't a very good pattern. At least it seemed to me, at least in this eastern part of the state last year. I know you had some good luck down in the southwestern part of the state, and it just seemed kind of quiet around here for us. And it was harder for me to get out on weeknights too this past summer, spring chase season. So my chases were limited, but probably one of the best chases I had, and it was probably one of my best chases I've had in a while was on May 27th, and it was a Saturday. And so I'm trying to had everything queued up, and I realized I probably wanted to show an SBC dialogue box to show what the day was looking like to start. This 27th was a bigger day out west. There was a moderate risk for southern Missouri, southern Illinois, but it extended all the way to the east into Virginia. I think there was probably a front, probably draped across the entire Ohio Valley coming across. And so we were looking at a situation where there were some storms in the Ohio Valley in the morning that were coming across the mountains and potentially going to refire on the east side of the Appalachians and stir up a little action for us. And that's pretty much what happened. I started the day up at Zion's Crossroads, and actually at the Sheet Station there. And one of the other Central Virginia storm chasers, or kind of chases all over the place, Mark Overbeck, we kind of rendezvoused. We didn't meet up initially. He was sitting in Gordonsville that day, and I was sitting down in Zion's Crossroads. And we were just kind of waiting, watching the radar, trying to wait for anything to develop. And probably was there for a good 2 hours before anything really got going. I'm going to share the radar here that I was dealing with, or what things were looking like. So this is about 3:25 p.m. and you can see, we could see in the distance some fumes kind of popping up over the mountain. There's basically these radar returns here around Harrisonburg up in Rockingham County. And so we figured these were going to eventually pop over the mountains and redevelop and turn into our afternoon storms and just kind of do the traditional northwest to southeast track across the state of Virginia. And so as things kind of started wearing on, I'll fast forward here about 15 minutes, those storms started to congeal and pop up, but then my eye got caught on this little guy down here. Giving him some retrospect, there's Charlottesville where my mouse cursor is. Zion's Crossroads is probably right on the CWA changeover right there. And so I actually saw this storm. I was so focused up here, the stuff coming from Harrisonburg, I just started noticing on the left that the sky started getting darker. And I was like, oh, hey, we actually got something popping up here just to my south. So I dove south on 15 real quick just to kind of get south of this and keep an eye on it. And train out there was awful. 15 is a 2-lane rolling road, slowly making its way down to the James River. So there were very few spots to actually look and get some good views of the storm.
Amen. I've been down there.
Yeah. So time kind of passed. Storm kept blowing up. So I said, I'm sticking on this storm. And I think Mark waited a little longer to see what the stuff coming across the mountain would do. And it looked kind of messy and disorganized. This little cell kept trying to get its act together. So I followed it along, and I'll switch over to some pictures here. This was one of my initial shots. I think this was I'm trying to recall the little town I was sitting in. It's just a little crossroad with a grocery just south of 64 on 15. Let me pull up my map real quick so I can remember where I was. It had a real nice updraft. Clouds were just rocketing into the sky, just sitting there watching it. And watching it from the very beginning, you get to see the whole thing develop right in front of your eyes. Still trying to pull up the town here. Either way, people are kind of looking at me funny, sitting in the parking lot, just staring up at this cloud billowing up into the sky. I think I was in the area of Palmyra. Sorry, should have known that one. But so I got on Route 6 east and started following the storm. It pretty much paralleled Route 6 all the way through Louisiana and Goochland counties. A nice shot of the Peleus cloud kind of showing a revigorated updraft as the storm kind of was cycling as it was heading down the road. Took the storm a while to get going. It started to kind of peter out, and I'd been kind of, storms up to this point I've been watching have been doing this coming east. They just kept dying and dying. Not necessarily this day, but in previous days.
Right.
But finally, once the storm got right around the west end of Richmond, far eastern Goochland County, or far eastern Louisa County, right along the border with Goochland, it started ramping up and looking more and more impressive, both on radar and visually. I'll move down some photos here. This is a little earlier. The bay, kind of a meager looking base, nothing to get super excited about. But then once it started rolling into short pump, that's when we started actually seeing some rising motion, cloud tags riding into the storm. So we could tell both visually and on radar the storm was getting a lot more energy. And about that time, this was sitting just west of Centerville, Virginia, which is on Broad Street, Route 250, just west of Short Pump.
Yeah.
The cloud tag started rising, and about that time, a severe thunderstorm warning was finally issued. So we followed this into Short Pump. We just about got pinned by it because the storm was slowly sinking south as it was moving east, and so we were running out of real estate on a Broad Street to keep up with it, and literally got out of Short Pump. Literally, as we could see on one end of a parking lot, there was rain crashing down. Other than the parking lot was bone dry. So we got out of there before it overtook us and headed down to Route 6 again. This is just off 28. This is at the 288 interchange on Route 6. Kind of looking at the storm from a little bit more distance, not underneath it like we were earlier, but still constant rising cloud tags, a little bit of ominous lowerings, nothing too organized, but a little bit of structure up there, nothing too outrageous. But at that one point here, I'm going to show another picture here, a screen grab I got from a video. Pop over to it.
And while you're doing that, actually that same day, my son and I were chasing the cell to your southwest, the one that was severe warned to the southwest of that one.
Okay. That one comes into play on my day a little bit later. So this was coming in on Route 6, had a nice bolt of lightning.
Cool.
Drop down in the sky right in front of me. I think I have two images up there, yeah. So the storm actually started turning more and more south, which was kind of starting to worry me a little bit because with the motion of the storms, the more it started cutting south, the more I figured it was going to start bucking the prevailing winds and get a little more rotation into it. And so I kind of had to drop south through the city. Along Chippenham Parkway, goes south around the city, and the storm really kind of came in from the west end and cut south. As soon as it hit about the west end of Richmond, it started heading straight to Marina. So it definitely had that curved motion in its path. Let me get back to the radar here. There we go.
Okay.
So as it's coming into Richmond, right about here, right as it's about sitting right at the city line, it just cuts. It starts following the river. And this is a path I've seen a number of severe storms take that have come into Richmond, especially right along that 64 corridor. They'll get right about to the city and just cut south. So I'm not really sure if that's just, a coincidence or if something to do with the river running the way it does, kind of grabs these storms and pulls them along. But I've seen a number of storms in the past just kind of take that route, come right down the river, cut with the river through the city, and then continue east.
Hey, it sounds like a research project.
That could very well be, yeah. So went down. This is actually right outside my work where I was taking these pictures here. The storm started getting some nice striations way up above. We were sitting pretty much right underneath them. A little bit of a shellfish-looking outcropping there. And then I'm going to go down the road. This was one of the last sites I could get on the storm before the storm that you were on earlier started pinching me in. I think I have a screen grab of my radar when I was getting pinched. But the lowering on the storm started getting a lot lower. This is when the storm actually started getting a hook on radar, and it was in its peak of its south motion. And so it was definitely getting a lot more ominous looking in terms of just the elevation, how low the lowerings were hanging. They weren't very organized by any means, but just the fact they were getting lower like they were was starting to worry me a little bit. So yeah, here's a shot of my position. This storm here, like I said, started off in the city up here, came in and just cut down right along the river. It had this hook appendage on it pretty much the whole time. I was kind of surprised. Looking back and forth to the velocities, there wasn't a lot of rotation, but just enough to, kind of cause concern.
Yeah.
Then here's this big storm that had been trucking in on 460 from the west. It was coming in a lot faster than the storm was moving southeast. So I was running out of real estate, and I could see the base of this storm coming right at me. And it was kind of an ominous looking storm. And I think there were some pretty decent hail reports coming out on this storm as well. So I knew I didn't want to be messing with it when it came over. And I had no escape route here, so I had to bail back onto 95 and shoot north to get around it. And I think this was the storm. I can't remember now was this or another one that dumped a ton of hail in the Varina area in Rico. Because I know I went after a storm. I came into the after effects, and I went down Route 5 along the Capitol Trail, and there was hail everywhere. It looked like it snowed down there.
Yep.
In the middle of May.
That may have been that storm that we were on, because we kind of gave up on that in western Nottoway County, and it had laid down a carpet of hail, very large hail, that we just kind of gave up and let it go.
Right. Yeah, it could very well have been that. I kind of got blurry. I was just trying to get out of that situation there, especially with the traffic dealing with 95 in that area. It's not
right.
Not the ideal chasing terrain, and it seems every chase I go on, I wind up in that area, just the natural progression of the road network down there. That was a flanking line of the storm the second storm, I believe, when I bailed off to get away from it. I went up to 895 and it passed underneath me. And this was a little more ominous of a lowering that was associated with it as I went back into the city from the Varina area. There was a second line of storms. I'm going to jump back to radar real quick. So these two kind of individual cells came through first, and then behind it, there was a whole other line forming. That actually kind of morphed into a semi-squall line. It's a big linear mess of storms. Not really severe, though, but visually, or went severe a little bit later. But visually, as I got closer to this, it was a very impressive storm. You're looking back at those storms from earlier, some overshooting tops there in the distance. But then as this other little line moved in, I got a very high quality shelf cloud moving in on me with multiple layers. Just a phenomenal looking cloud for visually for what you see around here. So I was just sitting in the parking lot and watching this thing come over me. This is kind of what I thought was going to be the end of my chase day. It was the end severe wise, but it wasn't the end cloud wise. So this kind of came right on over, and it had some phenomenal lightning with it. I didn't catch anything on camera, but just the proximity to the lightning to where I was. I mean, it was some scary loud claps of thunder that hit every couple of minutes. I even went into one of the stores here in the shopping center once it kind of passed over, and something must have just hit the building. It was one of the loudest claps of thunder I've heard indoors in a long time. That was one of my more favorite pictures I took of that. You know, it almost gives it like a mothershipy look, but it was a lot more linear than what this picture does.
That's cool. It's at least a KP3, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so once this all passed over, I got back to my house, and as soon as I got out of my truck and looked up, I had a phenomenal Mamatis display going on over my head. I'm trying to get some of the better pictures here, but it didn't even occur to me to look up that this would even be happening. And I think I may have even gone inside and I heard something saw a post about something about my Mamatis clouds. And I looked outside and had all these huge Mamatis clouds dipping down above me. So that was kind of the highlight to the end of my day.
Yeah.
You know, having this nice Mamatis display going on, which you don't get a whole lot of around here. I don't feel like.
Those are really impressive, especially when they happen around here towards sunset.
Yeah, the perfect lighting to kind of, the sun popping underneath it. They come out better here, but visually they look better when it was brighter out. But by just taking pictures with my cell phone on this, I couldn't capture that great of quality, but it was still a very impressive display. And, I'm standing out in my street, just looking up in the sky, looking at this. My neighbors are looking at me like I'm some kind of idiot just standing out there.
I get that a lot.
just rattling off pictures left and right. So that was the highlight of that day. It really the highlight of my chase season this past year. Like I said, I couldn't get out as much as I wanted to, but the few times I was able to get out, this one included, it made it a good season for me. So I'm looking forward to hopefully some better setups this year. That was kind of the biggest thing that was hurting me this year, is setups that didn't exactly give me a reason to leave work during a weeknight, and setups that didn't want to come on weekends either when I did have the time to go out and do stuff. So looking forward to hopefully a little better weather, a little worse, better weather this season.
Yeah, that definition changes when you're a storm chaser versus being stormed on, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice storm. That was Memorial Day weekend, because I remember that's when Nathan and I were. He was here, and that was the first time we had chased together in probably 3 years, just because of schedules and stuff. And we followed that storm basically just north of 460 all the way across into Nottoway County, and it was pretty impressive too. And so we saw the backside of what you were and the south side of what you were seeing from the east. So
Right.
it was a good storm.
Mhm.
All right, we have Mr. Peter Forrester with us, and he's apparently has eradicated his camera problems he was having with his laptop. How's it going, Pete?
Yeah, finally, I just took a computer restart to get that all fixed. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. What you got for us today? What date and location are you talking about?
Yeah, so let me get this screen share going. It was a supercell, a cyclic supercell that we caught in Gatesville, North Carolina. And boy, I tell you, you don't expect like Great Plains quality storms here on the East Coast, but this thing just blew me away. And Mark Overbeck was my navigator on this chase, and I got to give him credit for making some navigational calls that brought us in perfect positioning for the storm. But it was a group effort. It was over 700 miles of driving that day.
Wow.
And it was worth it, though. It was worth it, but I was pretty tired.
I have to ping on Mark a different way. I tried to get him on this broadcast, but I never caught up with him. So we'll have to get him on some other way.
Yeah. All right. So let's see here. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, it's black right now, but
okay. Gatesville, North Carolina supercell.
It was showing a second ago. Now it's just a black screen.
there it is.
There it is. Okay.
There it is. We can see it there.
All right, cool. So this day was a slight risk. This was August 7th. Slight risk for primarily Delmarva. I remember the SPC talking about tornado risk in Delmarva. So, of course, me sitting in Charlottesville thought, well, there's no way we're going to get all the way. You have to get across the bridge and whatever to get there. But looking at the forecasts, there was a little stretch of SIGTOR and supercell composite to the south, reaching down into North Carolina. And even though that wasn't in the bullseye for the SPC forecast for tornadoes, which you can see here was 5% over Delmarva, we decided to target the more southern area along Route 58 and in northeastern North Carolina. So the conditions that day, pretty high SRH for this time of year. Usually we get these values in early spring, and this was a surprising amount of directional shear for midsummer. You can see 300 bulk SRH, which is a good amount of spin in the atmosphere. But the most important part, I think, for this day is that 200 of that was in the 0 to 1 kilometer range. So that's the bottom layer of the atmosphere. And all that directional shear, you can see there's a little bullseye of it here over northeastern North Carolina. And that low-level shear, the low-level directional shear, combined with a fairly substantial CAPE of 2,500, made for pretty good storm setup in that area, even though the SPC only gave it a slight risk and a 2% chance for tornadoes. So early in the day, this was a incredibly frustrating chase. I remember that the amount of convection that fired ahead of this cold front that was drooping through was just so substantial. I don't remember if it was a wedge day or not, but it certainly felt like one. We had
around here lately. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I know it's terrible, but we had just stratiform precipitation all around us. We caught one very short-lived supercell just south of Franklin, Virginia. Franklin is probably 50 miles to the west of Virginia Beach or Chesapeake on Route 58. And this thing spun up. It was maybe a supercell for 10 minutes. You can see it had a nice little inflow tail on it, and got this rain-free base separated. Again, it only lasted 10 minutes. We got a grand total of 5 pictures in a short time lapse. And then more stratiform precipitation up behind it. So this was, again, 600 plus miles of driving, and we're all the way down to Franklin, Virginia going, oh my goodness, what's this setup going to do to us? This is a picture we got in Franklin of the surface winds, and they were I believe out of almost the due east. So the winds were backed. We just had to get isolated convection. So what ended up happening is just south of the North Carolina line here in Gatesville, North Carolina, there was a little cell that popped up with a rain-free base, and you can see there it had solid rotation. And we had been watching the storm for a little while, but it was there's a lake there, I think, called Roanoke Rapids, and that area is just very unchaseable with trees, and it's flat, and there are no bridges across the lake. So we had to wave at this one as it passed by. But it kept its rotation for long enough that we were able to drop south out of Franklin and navigate in front of it. And you can see here, this little rotational aspect on the backside of the storm lasted for almost 2 hours.
Wow.
And it recycled probably 4 times. It would die off a little bit, and then it would strengthen again. And so we decided to make our move and get down in front of it. And you can see we positioned in the stratiform precipitation ahead of the cell with the hopes that it would run us over. We would get a shot at it and that it would survive that long. So we found a field near Gatesville, and this was the view we were greeted with, this mesocyclone slowly coming out of the stratiform precipitation. And man, it was spectacular. It was spinning really hard. And we found this field just by a farmhouse. It was totally wide open, probably half a mile before the nearest trees, and we could see all the way to the storm, which was still a couple miles away. And we were looking to the north, and as it passed to the north, we just had this spectacular view of this mesocyclone. So cool.
That is cool.
We were able to see the lightning was crazy because it's a rain-free base with a strongly rotating updraft, and that, of course, is an ingredient for good lightning. And there, you can see over here on the right side, there was a hail shaft. Mm-hmm. And so the updraft combined with the downdraft, it was crazy lightning, and we could only get out of the car for a couple minutes because the lightning scared us to death. So here's another shot. You can see the hail core a little bit more clearly here in my little car, the Stormtrooper, dwarfed by this massive mesocyclone just passing over us. And that, it totally made the 600-mile drive worth it. And yeah, so after doing that, we followed the storm to the east towards Chesapeake, towards Elizabeth City and everything. And I think I just lost my camera. There I am. It died out. We caught it at the very last cycle that it did. We caught a little bit of a mesocyclone over the Great Dismal Swamp, which is a gorgeous area, by the way. I'd not been down there before, and it's really pretty landscape. But the storm died out pretty quickly, and then we got slammed by everything. All the convection decided to fire at the very last minute. So we were sitting in downtown Norfolk, getting poured on by this rain and these thunderstorms, and it was a long drive home after that. But so that day, it was definitely memorable. Highlight of the season. It's probably one of the better supercells we've ever had in this part of the country, at least that I've seen. All it was missing was a tornado. It was close. It got really close, but it never dropped it. So,
yeah, well, that was some awesome views there. And I'm wondering, based on your analysis there and what you were showing, is if, especially with those easterly surface winds, if there really wasn't some kind of wedge boundary there, either a coastal front or something that storm spun up, and it's what kept it cycling.
Yeah, there may have been. I forgot to check in the last couple of days when I was prepping for this, but I mean, it must have caught into some sort of boundary to keep spinning for that long, because it's rare that the atmospheric dynamics in this part of the country will support rotation for that long. So
yeah, no, that was a good catch.
Old outflow boundary from the day before, but you'd have to dig back into the archives.
Right. You have to look at the high resolution radar data, which, I mean, it's hard to get a hold of anyway, but
yeah. So, well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what I can do here.
Wall cloud around here that often. That's.
I know, it was a sculpted meso with a wall cloud that was spinning like crazy below it. And we just sat there for 15 minutes speechless because
there's chases out in the Great Plains. You don't get to see that often.
I know. So the only thing I missed this year was a tornado. I'm still 0 for 0 on tornadoes in Virginia.
Well, there's not that many of them, I can tell you that, but you kind of have to really get lucky with it.
That's right.
Let me, I need to, here we go.
It's been since 2011 since I've seen one here. I was in Waverly when Waverly got hit, but I was hightailing it east when it actually came through, and I don't.
Did you chase Did you chase the February 2016 setup at all?
Yeah, that was when Waverly and the second Appomattox were hit, correct?
Right.
Yeah,
I saw a couple tornadoes in North Carolina that day, but
okay, nice.
Yeah,
I started that day in Waverly and just missed that tornado. I was sitting in downtown Waverly when the wind started whipping up real bad, and I said, I got to get out of here. And
sure.
Just hightailed the east on 460 because I literally just popped out of the precip and was sitting there, and I looked to my right and I thought I saw a cone, kind of a dark cone against a very poorly backlit sky, so I couldn't really make out much. But then when the wind started whipping up and heading that way, I knew I needed to get out of the way. And radar wasn't helping me out much to know the exact direction, so I just wanted to get as far east as I could. So by the time I stopped and turned around, it had already passed through.
Do you know what that tornado was rated?
I think it was only rated an EF0.
Okay.
But it was on the ground it was actually on the ground for 6 or 7 miles, I think.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah, that day was crazy.
Yeah. That was a nutty day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wound up chasing that day too, and I missed the Appomattox tornado, but I saw the cells that it wound up being, coming from, and then a bunch of other tornado-worn cells. But let me play with this here.
All right. I think we saw the Appomattox cell from Danville too. It screamed past us at like 70 miles an hour. Like,
yeah,
well, there goes that chance.
That's what I was doing. I was on using 58 as my east-west route and just staying just ahead of it as the cells went zipping by. So
yeah, it's all you could do that day was just kind of pick a spot and watch. Pretty
much. So, well, what I'll talk about from last year, from 2017, and I agree with Andrew that even down here, sometimes you have luck in this part of the world with wedge fronts and stuff. If you can find a storm along them, it really wasn't as active this year as it has been. Especially, I think 2016 was. I felt like I was run ragged in 2016. I got tired of chasing actually because there was so much going on. But 2017, there was a few setups that were pretty good. This one was actually July 5th. And you notice there, that's the SPC setup for the day, and it's only a marginal. And there was a wedge front that was kind of across, draped across southern third of Virginia or so. And there were some storms forecast to fire. The convective allowing models were firing storms during the afternoon, kind of out over the Piedmont. But then there was a short wave that was coming across the mountains later that evening. So there were going to be 2 rounds of storms. So what I did is I picked up my chase partner in Roanoke, and we headed out to the Route 29 corridor and kind of hung around over there for a while, watched convection build to our north and the east, and looked at it on radar and watched it a while. And it wound up being it was a big hairy mess. And it was not something you'd want to chase. And I didn't want to follow it any further east because I didn't want to be too far out of position for the next round that was coming across the mountains. So we broke it off, drove down 29 to Danville, went down here to the southern part of the state and kind of meandered our way over to the southwest to Martinsville and stayed on 58. And actually, we wound up kind of just wandering around for a while, just not trying to kill time, but to try to, make some use of what we were doing. This is the view from the Blue Ridge Airport, which is officially known as the Martinsville Airport. It's about, 8 or 10 miles west of Martinsville off of 58. And it's just really nice, you could see Cumulus building in the west and, looking over the mountains. There was just nothing going on. And it was, of course, being July, it was hot. So we got tired of sitting around waiting. So we just kind of jumped on 58 and wandered west, went through Patrick Springs, and went through the town of Stewart, which is literally, if you've ever been through there, is at the base of Route 58, or a base of the mountains on Route 58. Did a U-turn, came back east of Patrick Springs, and stopped about 6 o'clock or so at a little convenience store that we'd eaten at before. Just, knew that we could grab some food there. Bought some food. They had a little covered shed outside with picnic tables. Sat down, and literally I was reaching for my sandwich when we heard the first peal of thunder. And that was what was on radar. And so we're here sitting on 58, eating our lunch or our dinner actually, and this one little cell popped up. And if you notice, it starts forming a hook back here. And I found that it was kind of interesting, and it wasn't moving that fast, so we didn't really hurry. But we finished eating and then moseyed on west a little bit. Found a spot where we were looking. This is pretty much looking northwest at the storm. And you can see the striations there, and it had what looked like was a wall cloud that didn't last very long. It was that lowering there underneath the base. It retreated, but the striations were there, and you could watch the updraft just build all the way up as it went ahead. So we said, well, just to keep an eye on this, let's drift back east on 58 for a mile or two and find a spot where we can see it. And that's what we saw. That is the best picture of a tilted updraft supercell I've ever seen in Virginia. I mean, my jaw just dropped. And Steve, my chase partner, he's a weather fanatic, and he's a pilot, he retired law enforcement. He's learning a lot about chasing, but he had no idea what he was looking at until I started explaining it to him. You don't see this very often around here, Steve. you can see there's Route 58 in the lower left-hand corner pointing west, and here's the Blue Ridge, and there you got the base, the striations, the updraft are just exploding up here. You can see how it's tilted. The rain and hail is falling out ahead of it. I was amazed that we actually had that view. And this particular storm wasn't moving that fast. We sat essentially in one location and just turned the camera and turned the car around and just watched this thing for probably 20 minutes or half an hour. I mean, this is pointed now pretty much due north. And there you can see this is the same base, the inflow tail from the east, the striations there, just a gorgeous storm. But then we looked at the radar, and this was our storm that was now to the northeast of us, was fading a little bit. Then there was a storm coming out of the southwest, here out of North Carolina, and another set of cells which is morphing into a line crossing the mountains to our northwest. So we decided to drift back west and take a look at what was going on. This was the southwestern cell. This was in that one field I found out there. Again, it's kind of like Pete was explaining. There's a farm field that had maybe a half a mile across, gave a pretty good location to sit and watch a storm. And you can see the lowering here. This whole thing was rotating as it was coming at us as a nice wall cloud. But we couldn't sit there very long because the rain shaft was heading our way. So we moved back out on Route 58. Here's our little convenience store again. Again, we didn't move very far from this spot. And this was storm number 3 coming across the mountains with a nice shelf cloud. So we sat there and watched this shelf cloud coming at us for a while. But I kept hearing that storm number 2, I kept hearing more and more thunder coming from it. So I said, Steve, we need to head back west to check this thing out again. And we wound up here. And here's the southwestern storm. Here's the northwestern storm. And, probably this is 8:06, probably by about 7:45, I knew we were in for it because we had nowhere to go. Fortunately, checking the VIL and some of the other characteristics on radar, I knew we didn't have any hail to worry about. It was just heavy rain, but we were right in the thick of it. And I'll show this video here in a little bit. I'm going to go back. But as Andrew was talking about, in his supercell there, and then as Peter was talking about the supercell in North Carolina, this thing, when these two storms collided, these two systems collided, the lightning was incredible. I mean, it was coming down. It sounded like artillery dropping around us. It was, that rapid and that close. And so, we were sitting in the vehicle, not touching anything metal, just letting everything kind of, go around us. So we essentially saw 3 different, really nice storms that day. Now let me come back here, and I'm going to see if I can screen share this. movie clip. Can you see that clip?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let me start it here. This is storm number one, looking at it from the north, looking to the northwest. And you can see this is sped up, I think it's 8 times. You can see it, spinning around a little bit. You kind of get the idea that it's rotating. It's not really that impressive, but it's kind of cool looking. Mm-hmm. But then we move from this particular location, we moved back about a mile or two east, and watch this thing just spin. You can see, look at the updraft just punching up behind it. And you can see the whole thing rotating. It would just, again, as Peter said, you don't see this kind of stuff around here very often, especially on a marginal risk day. And I don't remember that any of these, there may have been one of these cells that went severe warned for a while, but most of them weren't, had no warning on them at all. This is a little further east as this thing traversed along. I remember sending pictures of this or getting reactions, and after I tweeted a couple of pictures out from the National Weather Service office in Blacksburg. In fact, it was Jamie Morrow. He said, "And we had no idea that stuff was going on down there. we couldn't tell from what we were looking at on our radar. They were seeing these pictures, and their jaws were dropping like ours were." So, anyway, that was my my July 5th supercell in southwestern Virginia, and I mean, there were some other storms too, but that was to me, that was visually was the most impressive one I saw.
And those marginal days, they surprise you sometimes around here.
I mean, they really do. And of course, the older chasers, us old farts, remember the old CTEX days, right? Right, Andrew?
Yep. Those would be the hidden gems usually.
And a lot of times I think it's just because the potential is there. It may not be ballistic parameters, but the potential is there for 1 or 2 cells to look pretty good and not have to worry about a lot of competing cells. And if you go out looking, you can find them.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think it's, when you start getting those days that are enhanced, moderate, the dynamics are almost too much, and you just get, a cluster of storms everywhere, and nothing can really stand out and be on its own. They're you get all these storms fighting each other.
Right.
These marginal old CTEX days where you just get that one storm to fire, it was going to have the environment. And the whole reason they kept the risk low is they didn't know what storm cover.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
When you have one storm, you're going to go to that one storm. But when you have 10 storms and you don't know which one's going to produce, you just kind of throw a dart at the board and pick one and hope it works.
You're right. So, hey, Pete, you got to leave pretty quick here?
Yeah, I got to get rolling. So thanks for having me on. It's always good to swap stories with storm chasers. I look forward to this. So.
Okay. Well, one other announcement. I hadn't talked about this ahead of time with Andrew. One other thing, and the date and location is not pinned down yet, but we'll use this forum as the way to announce that we're going to have a ChaserCon here in Virginia this fall.
Sweet.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're negotiating or looking at again dates and location. It'll be late October, early November, that time frame. I'll put it that way. And so we're looking at venues, and once we tie all that down, we'll look at speakers and things like that. But we're going to do it. So just to let you know, or throw it out there, and we'll give you dates and times later on.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Hey, who knows? We might ask you to be up there to speak.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, Pete. You take care, man.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one.
So, what do you think, Andrew? What do you think 2018 is going to be like for Virginia?
Well, storm-wise, it can only go up for me from last year. I can't really remember what coming out of a La Nina pattern really means for us in terms of weather. I know we're kind of struggling with a little bit of a drought around here right now. So I know back in the days of chasing in the plains, I was always the point of Dave's was, when you had drought conditions, you didn't have that ambient moisture for storms to deal with. The ground's not evaporating under intense sunlight to really give that extra boost of instability. But if we can kick this drought a little, bring in kick the drought, kick these constant wedges we've been dealing with for the last couple of years, or at least put them a little further north, so I don't have to go down to North Carolina to find a wedge front to chase. That's been the killer these last few years, is just dealing with the wedge. The only day it really eroded good in the last couple of years was the February event back in 2016. That day started as a Stockton wedge here in Richmond, and it retreated north really fast. I think by 11 o'clock it was already into the 70s. I was down in Colonial Heights at the time. So if we can get more setups where the wedge can actually erode, get out of here, and get us some sunlight, get us some instability, I think we'll be in for some better chase days here, at least in the central part of the state. I know, my misfortune is usually your fortune down there in the southwestern part of the state. So.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I know that as far as comparative years, 2011 was a year that we were coming out of a weak La Nina from over the winter. You remember how active 2011 was with some of those outbreaks.
Yeah, that was my first and only tornado in the state, in Virginia and North Carolina that same year too. So
yeah,
that's what it means, and the outlooks are good, but that also potentially means some really bad outbreaks elsewhere. So
exactly. But your point is well taken, that as dry as it's been, and one of the meteorological axioms is drought begins drought. It really takes something major to break a dry pattern. So we do need to get out of this dry pattern. That was, last year, 2017. I'm trying to remember the last chase I did was maybe the third week in August. And after that, the rain and storms and everything just shut off. I mean, we didn't have hardly any rain at all last fall.
You especially usually get one or two chases in the fall with those, semi-springish setups where you have the cold air coming in for the first of the fall season. And that didn't happen this year at all. I mean, nothing after August.
Yeah, and even with the very active tropical season, we didn't get any rain out of any of that. Much less storms out of that this fall.
We haven't had a tropical route, do what Ivan or whatnot did years ago, bringing those feeder bands all through the eastern part of the state. We haven't had a setup like that in a very long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while. So we'll see.
I'll say, I don't mind us not getting hit by hurricanes.
Yeah, I am not. I'm not fond of those. The only way I like them, if coming through Virginia, is if the remnants come through and they mix with some sunshine and you get some storms, some small storms. I'm not going to chase a hurricane. Sorry.
No, that is not my cup of tea. People ask me, I've chased a tornado. Like, you go chase a hurricane? I said, no, those people are crazy.
Yeah,
it takes a crazy person to know a crazy person, I guess.
It does, and I've heard people talk. I know I've heard Josh Werman talk about chasing hurricanes like down in the Louisiana bayous, and just how just nasty and terrible everything is. It's just I don't want to put up with that. I'm past that point in my life where I really want to rough it that bad.
Yeah, if I'm chasing a hurricane, I'm doing it somewhere well inland where I've got a field around me for miles and not a tree around me where I can just sit there. But at that point, you don't see anything. You're just sitting there in a bunch of wind for a while. So. Exactly.
So.
At least with the thunderstorm, we got some pretty sights.
All right. Well, as I said as we got started, I will drop that link to Dean's video into the comments on this YouTube video, so people can go to that and look at it. But otherwise, and I apologize that some of the other folks that couldn't make it, we were hoping to have some of the other chasers provide some background of what they saw last year. But we'll do this again, and maybe if we have an active year, maybe we'll do something in between. We won't wait until next January to get this done. But in the meantime, we'll just call it an evening, and we'll say thanks for showing up.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you.